Welcome back to City Week, ladies and gentlemen. Now I'm being joined by two of our senior inspectors from the City of LaGrange. I have to my far left, Jim McLaughlin, and immediately to me I have Scott Bowen. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Glad to be here.
Well, you know, I've had time with you guys here now for almost a year and a half with you, Jim, I believe, and Scott is not quite a year yet. And I just want to say thank you both for what you all do for the City of LaGrange in the way of inspections. Because prior to you all coming on board, it was Glenn and myself and Mr. Ed Davis, and with all the things that we have going on, it was a little bit overwhelming. So I'm appreciative to both of you gentlemen for being on our team now. Let me start out by asking Jim just to introduce yourself again and tell us a little bit about you, if you don't mind.
I'm Jim McLaughlin. Prior to coming to the city, I worked with Troup County. I had been there 17 and a half years. I had wanted to work in the building inspections more, and the opportunity came along with the city to do that. So I put in an application, and things worked out, and so I really enjoy what I do now.
Absolutely. And I'm going to get back to you having previous employment with the city a little bit later here, Jim, where our relationship started out some time ago. But I want to ask Scott. Scott also has previous employment. I'll talk about that in a moment. But Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Scott Bowen. I've been a heat and air contractor for about 30 years. Been a home builder. A foreman for a company in town, and then I was a building inspector about 15 years ago for the city, and just had my hands in quite a few things along the way.
Okay, and again, it's a pleasure to work with both you gentlemen. And Jim, tell us about your previous employment with the city, if you don't mind.
After I graduated from college, LaGrange College, application with the city, and that's where you and I had contact before. I worked for the City of LaGrange Police Department November of '89 through February of '95.
That's right. And that's right. And Jim and I can remember FTO, I think, riding along with you, and of course, then training classes with you and stuff there, and being out on the road, protecting and serving the citizens of LaGrange, and you're still doing that today. So we again just thank you both for what you do. Talk, if you gentlemen don't mind, talk a little bit about your role with the city as an inspector, and I'll just bounce that to both of you all. Jim, tell us a little bit about your role as an inspector.
Well, as an inspector, we go out and we check residential houses from the breaking of the ground, the erosion, footings, foundation, the whole works there. We also check banners and flags in the community. We have complaints, we work those. We have complaints about businesses, we check business license. Anything that kind of comes up, we try to take care of. Absolutely,
and again, you guys do a wonderful job. And Scott, and I know you've been here with us now, I said not quite a year yet. Talk about a typical day for you, if you don't mind.
Oh, typical day is going and looking at a lot of new construction, commercial, residential, making sure that the community is getting the kind of house that we want the community to get, that everything's up to codes and safe and where things need to be. Love meeting the community and getting to know everybody here, builders and, like Jim said, people that have businesses and things like that, and just trying to make sure that we represent the community and make sure the community is getting a good product, and that our community stays on top of things.
Very good. I want to ask you, Scott, because you have prior working experience with the City of LaGrange as an enforcement officer. Talk about the change that you see from 15 years ago to today, if you don't mind.
Well, back then, housing was off the chain, rolling. We were building a ton of houses. It was before the crash, and it just seems like nowadays we're much more on top of our game as far as knowing the codes, learning, education, to try to make the what we do really count. To be professionals at what we're doing, and it seems like the community is growing in a different way. Before it was a lot of houses, and it seems like now maybe the community is starting to, and the city is better foundation with more businesses, more things like that coming, and just a better foundation to grow on. instead of just a ton of houses, you know, like we used to do.
Absolutely. We kind of diversifying because, as you stated, I remember back when I came back with the city back in 2005, 6, and 7. I mean, like you said, the housing market was booming. I can remember, you know, one year we had over 300 single-family housing units. One year we had over 400. I mean, we were really rolling there as far as the number of single-family housing permits alone were being sold. And then when the market bust, it kind of, you know, diminished. And then we saw multifamily came on the scene. And right now we're still trying to get back up to that level, and I know that you gentlemen see it firsthand, the lack thereof as far as single family housing permits and stuff. And you guys mentioned two things that I want to just point out, bring to light here. Both you mentioned about code. Talk about, Jim, if you don't mind, what building code we're currently working under as far as building housing inspections are concerned.
The 2012 residential building code.
Okay, all right. And Scott, you mentioned about SAFE. Why is it so important that as us as a city and you all as inspector that we make sure that these structures, whether it be residential, commercial, and industrial, why it is a safe facility?
Well, one, you got your families in it, and you've got just people going in and out of it. And two, you don't want to become known as a community where things are built cheap, where things are not up to code. The code is a minimum. On the code is just a minimum of the requirements that you're building. So we notice now a lot of builders are going above code because we are keeping that standard at that and encouraging them to go better and bigger, and a lot more builders are doing it, and it just makes our community and what we offer here, because you don't know how many times a rotation comes by and other people move here, that we have a good product in what we do in our businesses and in our residential.
Very good. And you know, and again, you both kind of alluded to this. Jim mentioned about footings, foundation. Talk about the accessibility of you two, and when builders are doing various buildings in our area, the importance of calling for those various inspections. Jim, if you don't mind, talk about that for us.
Well, the builders, we ask them that they call into our office to request for the inspections and whatnot. But Scott and I both have, and Glenn also, have gotten where we're on, they call us directly, you know, and tell us that they need inspection. We'll go out sometimes and just check and make sure everything's working in the right direction for them. If we see something they need to work on, we'll let them know. Sometimes we just stop in on the job and check it out. But we have a good relationship with our builders and our contractors and whatnot. So it's a real good situation.
Talk about, I mean, and God forbid somebody doesn't call in inspection at the timely fashion or the time that is needed. When we have that to happen, what's the recourse or what's the consequence of that, Scott, if you don't mind?
Well, say they're building a home or something, or some project, and they need a CO at the end of it. We're probably not going to sign something that we did not lay eyes on and make sure it was up to code, and it creates just a havoc at the end of a job, commercial or residential, that you're asking somebody to sign something they didn't see. And we're just not the kind of building department to do that. I mean, we want to see it, we want to make sure it meets the code, and that we're there every process. And not only that, seeing so much as the way we do and the experience we have in our background, we catch a lot of stuff ahead of time that saves a builder. You know, not only saves a homeowner that's buying that house, but it saves that builder, and we can correct it on the front end before it ends up as a lawsuit or something bad on the tail end. So our role is to protect the builder and the person that's purchasing the home or the business.
Absolutely. And you know, and I know that, another part of y'all's jobs, and I hear about it sometimes, is when they don't call for those inspections, like you said, they get to the end of the job and they need a CO, but sometimes in between that, before that, they get a stop work order too, right? Talk about that if you don't mind, Glenn. Jim, I'm sorry, call you Glenn.
That's all right. Well, sometimes we do have to go out and put a stop work order, and that just means that the work that's going on the project at that time needs to come to a stop until they've got the proper permits. And sometimes they just don't realize that they need a particular permit or whatnot. And so we do go out, but we really do try to make contact with them first and let them know that they are in violation of of what needs to be done. Maybe they didn't get the permit that they needed at that particular time. So we do try to make contact with them and let them know. But if we can't contact them, we go ahead and we have a little stake in our truck and a little poster that we put out that said "Stop work immediately."
A red card.
A red card.
A red card.
And
right.
everybody knows what the red card is. And normally our phone rings and your phone rings when we put that red card out.
That's
but
right.
It gets their attention.
That's right. And Jen, as you were stating that, you brought up a good question, a need for permit, because a lot of times when we own property, we think, well, I can go out there, I can build this utility shed in the backyard, or I can add on this carport. Can you talk a little bit about when a property owner might need a permit, or for what type jobs there? Can either one of y'all speak to that?
Yeah, anything electrical that you're doing in your house, electrical, you need to get a permit, and electrical has to be done by a licensed electrician.
Okay.
That's not like sometimes framing and other things you can do yourself. You can be your own contractor. But on electrical, heating and air, and plumbing, you have to have a licensed Georgia state license. And part of the reason is if your house was to burn down, and now it's getting to where the insurance agent goes and looks at the city permits. One of the first things they do, if there's no electrical permit there and that work has been done, insurance won't pay it. So it's a lot more to it. They just want to make sure everything's done up to cover for safety. Almost everything we do is for safety. Absolutely. For the most part.
Absolutely. And again, I can't thank you gentlemen enough. I know that I wanted to talk a little bit more about the inspection. I know a lot of our viewing audience know that the Great Wolf Project is going on, and you gentlemen have been out there on a number of occasions along with Glenn and Mr. Ed as well, and John Thomas. Don't want to leave anybody out as far as the inspection, and I've been out there a couple of times myself, and that's a magnificent project here in our community. But again, if someone has questions about the need for inspections or when they need to call for an inspection, can you give them you all's number so that they can have that for a reference, if you don't mind? Yeah.
My cell number is 706-668-7835.
Okay.
And mine is 706-616-1012.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, again, I want to thank you both for being on the show today, and thank you for what you do in the City of LaGrange, and as you stated so many times, keeping our residents safe and making sure that the facilities they go in are in a safe manner. So thank you both, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for more City Week in just a moment.